We learned this week that inciting and or gloating about political violence is all fun and games.
And we'll stand up to crazy Nancy Pelosi who ruined San Francisco. How's her husband doing, by the way? Anybody know? And she's against building a wall at our border, even though she has a wall around her house, which obviously didn't do a very good job. If she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know. So if you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously. Okay? Just knock the hell. I promise you, I will pay for the legal fees. I promise. I promise.
Until one's own champion is on the receiving end, in which case it's dreadful, disgusting, and all the fault of your political rivals.
Georgia Republican Congressman Mike Collins posted, quote, "Joe Biden sent the orders." And Trump campaign surrogate Nick Adams posted on social media, quote, "Joe Biden's rhetoric is directly responsible. There can be no discussion. This is a fact." And then right-wing journalist Sean Davis wrote that, quote, "Deranged Democrats knew Biden couldn't win, so they incited one of their toadies to try and take out his opponent."
We learned basically that there is absolutely nothing to which a certain cohort of American conservative cannot respond in partisan bad faith, a cohort very much including the newly anointed Republican nominee for the vice presidency.
Hooray.
This guy. We learned, yes, that Donald Trump had lit upon Ohio Senator and author of dull book Hillbilly Elegy J.D. Vance as his running mate, creating the proximate possibility of the first millennial U.S. president, thereby skipping Generation X, a development which will now be assessed by Monocle's Generation X desk chief, Tom Edwards.
Whatever, man. Just skip us out. We'll do something else. Better things to do anyway with my time.
We learned, when we looked it up in a big book, that the 39-year-old Vance was the youngest Veep nominee since Dwight Eisenhower added to his ticket a poor-born chippy military veteran turned dogmatic culture warrior. Richard Nixon, that was, and that worked out fine for everybody. From which decision we learned that maybe Donald Trump's narrow escape had revealed a hitherto dormant forgiving side to his character, as we learned that Senator Vance's views on the former president have evolved somewhat from this.
I'm going to vote third party because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.
To this.
If you go back to what I thought in 2016, another thing that was going on, Sean, is I bought into the media's lies and distortions. I bought into this idea that somehow he was going to be so different, a terrible threat to democracy.
So we learned, that is the media, that as usual it's all our fault. What are you going to do? And in fairness to Donald Trump, he has only tried to incite a putsch with a view to overthrowing the constitutional order once, and who among us, etc. We also learned from the vice presidential nominee something of the true agenda of the UK's recently elected new government.
What is the first truly Islamist country that will get a nuclear weapon? And we were like, maybe it's Iran. You know, maybe Pakistan already kind of counts. And then we sort of finally decided maybe it's actually the UK, since Labour just took over.
From which we learned that Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's past life as mild-mannered Director of Public Prosecutions was merely a cover for his true calling as a jihadist kingpin. Who knew? Anyway. We also learned quite a lot from the Republican Party more broadly about the priorities of the Lord God Almighty, who, while clearly having zoned out of several current wars, incalculable general cruelty and injustice, and in the specifically US context north of 40,000 American deaths by firearms every year, had apparently roused himself to intervene in one very specific instance.
You don't get slight grazes to the ear. I mean, that is divine intervention, that he was not, mortally wounded.
Fate stepped in, God, the hand of God, call it whatever you like.
Evil came for the man
we admire and love. I thank God that his hand was on President Trump.
The fact that this is about milliseconds and millimeters that changes this from being an attempt and an assassination should really talk about the divine intervention that has occurred here.
Trump is truly blessed by the hand of God.
We did not learn, as in fairness we generally don't in such instances, why God didn't get involved a bit earlier in the incident or intercede on behalf of the other casualties. Strange and mysterious ways and so forth, though perhaps just due reward to the beneficiary of divine intervention for his many diligent years of assiduous study of the Gospels.
I'm wondering what one or two of your most favored Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that
you
like?
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal.
And we learned that many others were happy to pontificate vis-a-vis the lessons which must be learned from the weekend's events, not least Maria Zakharova, spokesgoon of Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who sermonized as follows, read by Monocle's disingenuousness desk chief, Laura Kramer.
The U.S. must carefully reevaluate its policy of inciting hatred towards political opponents, nations, and peoples, as well as sponsoring terrorism.
Yes, imagine anyone inciting hatred towards political opponents, nations, and people, as well as sponsoring terrorism. That would be dreadful, and we thank Russia for its input. Mostly, though, we learned, as usual, that nobody ever really learns anything, and especially not anything about their own history. We learned that US President Joe Biden appeared completely bewildered, which we grant is not news in itself, but specifically completely bewildered by the thing that had happened.
The idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of.
Unheard of? Political violence in America?
Huh?
Well, quite. An especially extraordinary statement from someone who would well recall Kennedy's funeral, and possibly McKinley's, Garfield's, and Lincoln's. And Julius Caesar's. But we did learn that one elected representative does have a remedy for what ails modern democracies.
'Cause it's witchcraft.
We learned that Diana Șoșoacă, recently elected member of European Parliament, leader of Romania's hyper-conservative SOS party, massive weirdo, who reported for work bearing myrrh and an icon of Saint Paraskeva, possibly, who knows, patron saint of massive weirdos, proposed also engaging a priest to cleanse the Parliament of devils. At the close of this banner week for Romanian and American political discourse, we return to Laura Kramer, also Monocle's Romanian American Affairs desk chief, and indeed also Romanian American.
On behalf of both my peoples, I apologize.
Least you can do, Laura.
I know.
For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Muller.